How good does it get, SK?
Why not us, Charlie?
Today, live from the Pinecrest Inn, it's the Smylie Show. So long, everybody.
This is the Smylie Show.
Welcome back to another episode of the Smylie Show, where for once it's Smylie at home and I'm on the road. And man, we have just a full slate of golf topics of all varieties to get to. We, of course, have PGA Tour event that came down to a thrilling playoff finish in Hilton Head with Scottie Scheffler playing against one of the hottest players in the world, and Matt Fitzpatrick, and Matt Fitzpatrick prevailing in a playoff. We have a ton of LIV news to catch up on and recap, and golly, look forward to the coming weeks and months, and really looking at next year to see what's going to happen there. And then, of course, if you're watching this on YouTube and you haven't already watched the video we put out where Smylie Kaufman received an invite to play in the Zurich Classic, you got to go check that out right now, because we had a lot of fun there with Ryan Gerard, who extended that invite. And man, Smylie, I mean, we were close. We were really close to seeing the comeback, the re-debut.
The amount of times that I'll post a video of my golf swing or just on social media, and people say, "What, I'm ready for the comeback. When are you going to do it?" And internally, I'm like, "Dude, never." And so when this text came through, it was all the emotions in the world, right? Because it's the Zurich Classic. It's a place that you're familiar with, played a lot at. Sure, there's a bunch of water, but it's an event that's fun. Best ball is like not very intimidating. It's like, all right, go get him, Ryan. Like, you're the top 30 player in the world. But the alternate shot was definitely something that was giving me pause, right? Like that's a very scary environment for our tour player that's playing every day, not for a guy who's only played 4 rounds this year.
You guys would have had a blast, and you're correct on all those things, like home game, partnered event. And by the way, since I've known you, I feel like this is the best golf you're playing. You're striping it last time I saw you with Tony Ruggiero, and we got videos all week from Lake Oconee last week where we're just hooping.
Dude,
it was
yeah,
hard.
I
Easy 66s out there.
Yeah, like honestly, like the game is kind of coming around. The fields are kind of coming back. There's a lot of like really good stuff that I'm not ruling out not going to try to play in something down the road. Definitely feel like I could possibly do that, more so probably for content than anything, but
yes.
nothing as far as chasing a professional golf career, more so just kind of scratch that competitive itch, especially if I feel like I have enough control. And it's just, always trying to continue to challenge yourself as a human being. It'd be fun just to that was the one thing that we're going to the beach next week. And, when I told Fran this, she's like, I was like, it's next week. I sent the screenshot to Fran, and she's just like, wait, are you serious? Like she was blown away that this was actually a text message and a possibility. And so I said to Anna Carter, I was like, would you want to go watch Dad at a professional golf tournament? She's like, heck yeah. She was excited. I don't think she really knew that she had to turn on the beach too, and all this. So I think she was saying yes to both, but nice to have the support of not only of Fran through that like 4-hour stretch that was just, my head was spinning, going to hit golf balls. Dad, come watch me hit some. Like, can I go find whatever there is to be found to be able to give an answer to Ryan that is a yes or no in that moment?
Well, go watch that full video if you haven't already, because Ryan and Smylie kind of chart out the full timeline there, and then we have some fun with what the week could have been, and maybe tease maybe a 2027 Zurich Classic performance if all the chips fall into place. We'll see how it goes. But let's get to Smylie. We'll start briefly with the golf that was played this week, the RBC Heritage, before we kind of do a deeper dive and unpack of just an insane week of all sorts of news on the LIV front, what that means for that league. But at Harbor Town in Hilton Head, Matt Fitzpatrick's last 4 starts, Smylie, are a second place finish at the Players Championship, a win at the Valspar, a tie for 18th at the Masters, and a win at the RBC Heritage. And he did this. I know he had a 3-shot lead over world number 1 Scottie Scheffler heading into today, but he had to play all 18 holes at a place where they're both defending champions with a lot of pressure on him. And we even saw, as we were recording with Ryan, just watching kind of in the background and following on social media, that it was once again a somewhat hostile environment for Matt Fitzpatrick playing on, which by the way, that's so insane, because he said on numerous occasions, like, this was a beloved vacation spot for the Fitzpatrick family when he was growing up. Like, this is a place with lots of happy vibes. And yet People are maybe cheering for bogeys here and there. I don't know what he did to deserve this, but I mean, Matt Fitzpatrick, what he's done with his golf game, Smylie, maybe we can start there, just of the form he's in, the work he's done with Mark Blackburn, and the discussion you had with Mark on the show about the way he's transformed his game. And this guy is an absolute one of the factors in the world of pro golf right now, right up there with, for me, individually, my personal opinion, it's like you got Scottie and Rory at one level, and then like Cam Young, Matt Fitzpatrick are the next two in terms of form right now.
Yeah, and Ludwig Berg. Those were the three guys that I liked heading into the Masters. It's like Fitzy, Cam Young, and Ludwig Berg. It just seems like they've been playing the best this year. Then throw in, of course, Scottie and Rory, who can turn it on at any moment. We saw Rory do it at the Masters, Scottie do it this past week, and it feels like even with Scottie, it definitely wasn't surprising at all to see him have a great week, especially coming off of the Masters where he finished runner-up. But yeah, with Fitzy and just his game, man, it's so impressive to watch. I think he's got so much control, like just control of every aspect of his game, and clear in what he wants to do, and with every shot. Like there's just no indecision to me. Like he just doesn't look flustered at all about any situation he gets in. And the one thing that I keep harping on with Fitzpatrick is that the moment is not going to be too big for him. And I think you saw it on Sunday, even, if you want to call it blowing a lead, or just more so Scottie Scheffler doing what he does down the stretch. But Fitzy hit the shot on 18 in the playoff. That was a very difficult shot. Making birdie on that hole is just stupid. Shout out, obviously, Gary Woodland, maybe shot of the year, holding out on 18 to have another great finish. But man, I couldn't be more impressed with Fitzy's game. Is the one shot that I'll leave you with is that he has a shot that nobody else really hits, which is a low driver that just finds fairways. And if you can find, 11 fairways around, these guys are too good, man. And Fitzy's kind of figured out the formula of being able to hit it long and straight, but just doing it with a different apex, right? Not bombing it way up in the air, just getting it down on the ground. Maybe we should cater to that a little bit.
Yeah, I listen, there's a lot I'm trying to kind of take away from this week in terms of, notes from Fitzy, notes from watching Smylie Kaufman swing videos as he gears up for the potential comeback. So I'm writing things in my notebook. I will say, to your point on Fitzpatrick, not necessarily giving away, to your point, but Scottie Scheffler kind of chasing him down, and then the way he sort of flubs that chip on 18 in regulation and ends up making bogey to go that playoff, obviously would stick in a lot of guys' minds. But to your, getting up on that tee box in the playoff, hitting it up there to 8 feet 7 inches and making that birdie putt to win, again, just speaks to his sort of resilience and that mentality, and just if you really kind of want to equate it to a Ryder Cup scenario that he's had to deal with, at the Players with Cam, and now here at the Heritage to Scottie, he's really kind of built for these situations. I want to talk a little bit about Harbour Town in general, Smylie, because this is such a unique course, to like everything else we see on tour. And it was a little bit of a head scratcher to start the week, and you're seeing Aldrich Potgieter at the top of the leaderboard, or Michael Brennan, like these bombers, and you hear so much about this being a shorter course. But can you just describe, the how you strategize around this course? Because it feels like a lot of it has to do with approach angles. Like it's not just hitting fairways; it's which side of the fairway are you hitting it? And if you're on the left side for certain holes, are you blocked out for an approach where it's kind of angling right to left? Like what goes into strategizing for a course that is so unique to everything else you see on the PGA Tour?
Yeah, it definitely starts off the tee, right? Like putting the ball in play and finding fairways. If you're erratic at this golf course, you'll quickly find that you're either out of bounds or you're going to be in some serious tree trouble where it's going to be a chip out situation. I know Davis Love's team has been heavily involved in kind of the restoration of Harbour Town. I know this past year they've done some work and try to just continue to add elements to make it more challenging for the PGA Tour players. I saw a couple different features they added, and it's a awesome track, man. Like you go stand on the 14th tee, that par 3, and you just think to yourself, man, I want no part of this shot. But these guys get up there and execute, but it's one of the most dangerous shots on the PGA Tour these guys face.
I thought it was really cool watching a lot of different guys, not even in contention on the early coverage. It was a great watch, throwing on PGA Tour Live and just watching guys work their way around a really unique, piece of property.
Yeah, well, Thursday, Friday, and even Saturday, from what I watched, not a ton of wind, from what I could tell. At least it wasn't enough to make the golf course play super challenging. These guys, when they hit a bunch of fairways out there, you're still hitting a lot of wedges and plenty of scoreable opportunities. You saw that over the first couple of days, man. If you didn't go out and shoot, I'm not sure what Fitzy shot the first round. I think he shot 6 under, but he was 14 under through 2 days. And it's, I think he ended up at, 18 under par. So shot 4 under par on the weekend. Goes to show the weekend, obviously, got a little bit more firm, a little bit more wind. The front that came through overnight, getting a bit of a north wind, which you saw guys kind of struggling to hit their numbers on Sunday. And that's just classic springtime north wind, man. Like, the wind will come up, it'll come down, especially when you get wind going in and out throughout that property, going through the wind chutes, kind of like Augusta National at times, where, you're looking at your book and it's like, man, it should be the other way. And I think they probably dealt with a little bit of that today on Sunday. And when you have really small greens, and firm greens at that, you have to be that much more precise, and you kind of have to get a little lucky with the wind at times.
We also have a second week of confirmation that the demise of Scottie Scheffler has been greatly exaggerated. He's back in form with back-to-back runner-up finishes.
Only one win, though. If you told me at Hilton Head that Scottie Scheffler would have only had one win, I would say, how many runner-ups has he had? And I guess the answer, what is it, 2 now? Back-to-back runner-ups?
Well, back-to-back these last 2 weeks, and then if you kind of go back through the schedule this year. Of course, wins his first start at the Amex, T3 at the WM Phoenix Open, T4 at the AT&T Pro-Am, and then a run of, fine finishes, but not great by Scottie standards before you get the second at the Masters and the second here at the RBC Heritage. And, of course, he has the arrival of a second son in that period of time, too. So who knows? I mean, I think it's interesting that that period of time is also marked by a lot of chatter and a lot of observations from pundits about the swing looks different. He's doing this thing differently. And I think at the end of the day, it's with the team he has with Ted Scott, with Randy Smith, Phil Kenyon. The putting's been great this year. He's going to get it.
The putting. The putting's
so
amazing. Good. Like, he was, I haven't looked at the most updated putting stats for him, but this week he was top 10 in putting again.
And he was strokes game putting this week.
Yeah, no, I'm saying, like, just
for the season. I'm sorry.
Yeah, for the season, he was in the top 20 in strokes game putting, and his iron game was, heading into the Masters? I think it was 82nd approach to the green, and I'm sure the iron game, I think, was fine at Augusta. It was really good, obviously, on the weekend. But once the ball striking kind of starts sharpening a little bit more, man, he's just due to win another major this year. It's just obvious. You just don't know which one, or if it's multiple, right?
Yeah. Another great week for Siwoo Kim as well, finishing solo third. It's been a great year for him. And then how about Colin Morikawa? Like, for dad back sufferers everywhere, like a T4 this week, I saw a highlight of like a bunker shot where he kind of a weird stance. He just hit it and just like leaned backwards into the bunker face. It was like, I'm not even gonna do anything to tweak this back anymore,
buddy. I know that feeling all too well. When that lower back is starting to fire up, you are careful with every single move, especially when you're bending down.
Yeah. Do you want to talk at all about Ludwig Åberg? Not that he was necessarily, I mean, he finishes 13 under, so he's 5 off the eventual playoff score, but double at 16 today, and it's just a unique trend of a guy who we think so much of, and who has obviously played great in terms of finishing position over the past month plus, but is also in positions where we'd expect a guy with his skill set and his potential to convert some of these into wins. And just what you're seeing there from his performances and his game, and where there is room for maybe improvement or just development as a player to where you can convert some of these things into wins.
Well, winning's hard. I think that's just the bottom line, man. It's that it is difficult, and all you can do is continue to put yourself in that situation. Ludwig's done it, and it's going to pay off this year. I don't know what week it's going to be. Could be the next time he tees it up. I know he's not playing Zurich, but most likely playing Miami. It very well could be Miami. will be the place that he gets it done. He's playing too good at golf. He's hitting it too well. I'm not concerned about Ludwig Åberg. Winning's not easy, but I can tell you that I'm not I'm not the least bit worried about his inability to, if you want to talk about closing.
Yeah, top fives in his last 4 of his last 5 starts. So
he's really good at golf.
He's good. He remains very, very good at golf.
The only thing with Hilton Head too, and just a note, really, RBC Heritage was the one signature event where they expanded the field, and people are like, "What do you mean expanded the field?" Well, if you remember, Kapalua didn't happen this year, the Tournament of Champions, so PGA Tour had to find a make good for the players that had gotten into the Tournament of Champions that maybe wouldn't have got into another event, or signature event, if you will. So they said Hilton Head's going to be the event. If you are not already in Hilton Head, you're going to be added to the field if you qualify for the Tournament of Champions. That's why you saw kind of a bigger field this week, but then it also kind of goes into the conversation of Brooks Koepka being there as a first alternate, and then also having 2 additional alternates there with Keith Mitchell, and there was somebody else there too. But when Brooks gets added, 2 other guys get added too. So it was a wild Thursday to me, with just seeing, first off, really, really low scores throughout the board, but then also like having Brooks just sit there, just being like, man, this is the stuff that. This is a part that sucks, right? Like Brooks just wants to be there and go and compete, right? Like that's like, there's nothing worse than being the first alternate. I've been a first alternate and have had to leave the property after. You're just like, man, I don't want to have to deal with this ever again. And I know Brooks probably had the same feeling.
Yeah, 82 players in the field this week, and it's interesting too to take this event itself forward, maybe kind of folds into the LIV discussion we're having about, if we're looking at the future version of the tour and being in big markets, like where does this event fit in that? And I hope that events like this have a place in that future tour because of how unique the venue is, how cool the golf course is, how different it is to everything else we see. But it is a small market, and and just how's that purse get supported, and do purse sizes change or get right sized if there's not a competitor?
Setting the play-in up like this, what the NBA is letting everybody know is that the back-to-backs are completely unacceptable and the worst thing about their schedule. And these fools,
now they give them 3 days off for one game. Yeah,
they're so scared of back-to-backs. They go, not even in the play-in could we dream of giving anybody a back-to-back.
Game time decisions only on SportsGrid.
It looks like Rory McIlroy and Scottie Scheffler have replaced Tiger Woods and Phil Mickelson as must-see golf TV. 14 million people on average watch the Masters on Sunday on CBS. That's not including Paramount Plus. It's up 8% from last year, and it just about tied what was probably the best Masters Sunday performance. That was in 2015 when Jordan Spieth won it.
Newswire. Only on SportsGrid.
We may be talking about this as one of the best divisions in baseball. It's not generally something we do, but if the Pirates just hold court and the Reds just hold court and the Cubs are in this thing, the Brewers are going to be there in the end too. I mean, that's 4 of the 5 teams. I do think the Cardinals are going to push back at some point. They'll fall back a little bit, but I got 4 teams with a possibility of making the postseason here, Donnie.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
Whatever your next job is, the first 24 hours, it's going to be a rehashing of this. You have to suck that up. You can't avoid that. Like, I haven't been in prison in 7 years.
But people do
and
bring it
every
up.
story written about me still references the fact that I got in trouble.
Right.
So, unfortunately, you have to live with that the rest of your professional career.
The Craig Carden Show, only on SportsGrid.
was part of a different category of player, a returning member program that, has, as far as the tour is concerned, closed at this point in time. So depending on what happens with this next iteration of LIV, whether or not they're going to get funded through the end of the season or beyond, or maybe shutter in the middle of the season, that's a consideration for Bryson DeChambeau, John Rahm, and Cam Smith. And then what happens to the other players? I mean, I think a lot of these guys, not knowing what's going to happen, in 2027, do they stop playing now so you can start your clock like you saw Patrick Reed do? His last event being played in August of 2025. So the first tour start he can make, assuming he gets his tour card through, I guess really either way, because he has past status he can use, but he'll get in a better category for 2027 via a top 10 finish on the DP World Tour this season. He can start accepting sponsor exemptions a year from that date in August 26. So let's just dive into the timeline on LIV for Smylie, and then try to kind of segment each section of this and how we're responding to this. So as best as I can kind of summarize this, and there's a lot of detailed information in a lot of places, but I'm going to try to give a brief summary of what the week was like. On Tuesday, April 14th, Ryan French, who many of you know as Monday Q Info on X, teases a bombshell LIV story, and then later goes on the live, I think the Spaces function on X to say that LIV
definitely
is
got
the
TSS squad group chat flying once this tweet was put out, because then I started doing my own investigative reporting and said, boys, we might need to be ready tomorrow morning.
I would wager he had a lot of group chats popping, because Wednesday, April 15th, was like drinking from a fire hose, because we had reports that the Mexico City event was not going to be played. We had reports that players and vendors had not been paid. We had reports that there was an emergency summit in New York City for LIV Golf executives. We had reports those same executives were actively job searching and trying to find a quote, life raft off what looked like to be a sinking ship. There's a memo sent by LIV CEO Scott O'Neill to players and employees assuring that the season would go on, but there was no definitive commitment in that memo beyond the 2026 season. We had reports that the PIF would remain committed to funding the league through 2026, but not beyond. And then there was a PIF press release separate of all this that essentially provided a set of reasoning for that change in strategy, and outlining that strategy for their investments from 2026 through 2030. So then the LIV Mexico City event begins on Thursday, but even that was exceptionally bizarre, because the broadcast opens with Arlo White and David Faraday calling the reports of LIV's demise greatly exaggerated. But about 15 minutes into that broadcast, it goes off the air for 2.5 hours due to technical difficulties. And let me just say, Smylie,
if that was
objectively, that would have been the most hilarious way to shutter a league. Like, just 15 minutes of a broadcast, calling everyone dumb for saying the league was over, and then just be like, that was it. That's all. That's all we got. Didn't pay the TV truck, guys.
When I saw that LIV was having technical difficulties, like people screenshotting pictures of it, I was like, man, that they didn't need a Thursday round that went off the rails that quickly.
And any of us, especially having worked years in television, like
happens.
that can happen at any point in time. And so I actually feel a ton for LIV and the producers and directors on that side, because like there's no way they could have accounted for this, and it can happen. But
I guess they were having power issues throughout Mexico City, and so I guess like having to recycle and power back the whole system. It sometimes takes a long time for those trucks to get powered back again, and that can happen. And it rarely has happened in some big PGA Tour events. We've had times where you've only had to cover through a certain camera or whatever it might be. Right. Like, things can go south, but the timing of it, man, it couldn't have been worse, right?
So then as this event goes on, there's an interview that's later edited to omit this section with Scott O'Neill, the CEO, where he said, the reality is that you're funded through the season and then you work like crazy as a business to create a business plan to keep us going. That was a segment that was removed from that interview as it was reposted, but everyone, of course, had all eyeballs on LIV and captured that segment and reported on it. And then to top it all off, before the final round, the league's biggest draw and the man who's reportedly seeking a contract renewal in the $500 million range, Bryson DeChambeau, withdraws, citing a wrist injury. And so I just want to kind of try to take this in sections, Smylie. And so before we get into why this is happening, before we get into, what comes next, if this is indeed happening, what is your reaction to to the possibility that it could be happening at all less than 4 years after the league's inaugural event in June 2022?
I think shock, really, and a bit of surprise. I think we all felt like this is where we were going to end up, but so many different points down this road where we felt like they were losing momentum, and then all of a sudden, whether it be the Saudis or Scott O'Neil or whether it's a Greg Norman or a player signing, just give them enough of a bump to where it felt like they weren't going to go away. To have to give answers that they can't give answers to, and that was the whole first year of LIV. And so now when you fast forward 4 years, and now it's like, gosh, if Saudi Arabia does get out, and it all kind of just, it's like full circle, this whole deal with them, and now we're for a while you almost kind of forgotten about it because LIV had gotten a couple years down the road to where, golf had become so important. But I want to kind of look at the positives and negatives in LIV Golf and what the issues that they had moving forward, but also look at some of the positive things that they had moving forward. I think a couple negatives that first come to my brain, Charlie, would be the Bryson DeChambeau contract. That, I think, was the big leverage piece, not only for Bryson, but also it would have set a precedent again for the players. And not having Bryson re-up the prior year when Dustin Johnson re-signed, a couple other guys had re-signed, they need to have taken care of Bryson before they headed in to this season. I think that was a huge mistake, having a whole lame duck year for Bryson to not be under contract. So I think that was a huge negative. And what he was potentially asking for, let's say $500 million is the number. And now you're looking at all the purses and how much it costs and how much money they've lost, $5-6 billion. And I think any accountant, even in Saudi Arabia, would be like, hey, these things are starting to kind of add up, and this isn't going to just become cash flow positive anytime soon. So that was a huge negative of, I think, moving forward that maybe the Saudis looked at. But I think also just another, how about a couple positives, right? Like what has worked? Well, clearly golf in Australia has worked. Golf in South Africa has worked. Those are two really incredible hotbed places that they have been able to make LIV Golf work. I think they've had plenty of great environments, but too much of the team thing has not worked. Too much of the music being played so loud, like it just was not a good TV product. And so when we look at LIV Golf and how it hasn't been really well received in the United States, I think it then goes back to venues. And I think they, unfortunately for them, they went to a lot of places that just didn't have venues that we could relate to. I think the best venue that they could have gone to, and they did go to it, was Doral. It was a place that the PGA Tour had been, and I thought that rating was going to be the most interesting rating for the entire league because people would have tuned into a place that they knew, and they knew it was a PGA Tour tested golf course, and one of the more difficult ones too. And so when that rating came back as incredibly bad, I think it was up against San Antonio last year, I remember speaking with some executives that are like, this thing's done. Like they got no shot. And so I've always thought of, in my back of my brain, it's like, man, do you think LIV Golf, Charlie, if they would have valued venues in all of this, would it have made more of a difference? And do you think if they would have done a little bit different with the team whole aspect, if they would have done away with the teams, if they would have figured that out, and maybe the music, like do you think they would have reconsidered some of the things they've done?
It's interesting because I think that some of the points you've hit on, there's like a deep irony in that their greatest success stories were forever going to be unsustainable from the commercialization of pro sporting leagues perspective, right? Like it's almost like this past 4 years was the greatest mini tour of all time, the greatest golf exhibition that ever was, because they had this the deep pockets of the PIF that were like, yes, we'll throw as much money as we need at this thing. I mean, there was like the financial reports from 2022 to 2024 were $1.5 billion spent on this thing. And so there's more past that, to this date now, where like, yeah, we'll fund this thing and we'll go to Australia. And it was a smashing success down there. Yeah. But you can't, pull a TV rating in the United States against it. And that's how you're going to sell all these commercial partnerships. And unless there's someone who comes in and can do it in a more creative way, which they never did to date, that all that can ever be is just this kind of the grandest version of a one-off, because someone's willing to foot a bill that doesn't make it doesn't exist in a real world. It's just someone trying to, how long can we write this off at this cost until we can commercialize it? If we can't, we're going to pull the plug. And we're literally seeing that play out exactly in this timeline we're in with LIV. The venues thing is interesting because, and it's ironic we're talking about this after a week in Mexico where we saw Bryson, asking for a drop. It looks like he's playing a local muni. He's got like a ball on a patch of grass. There's like, hard pan mud all around him. He's calling over an official and asking for this. And it's like, and people are making the jokes online of like, you just went from Augusta to this. It's like, okay, comparing to Augusta is a pretty tough scene, but still it's obvious that they're not going to the best places in golf, and they can't get access to those places via their current, partnerships. Yeah,
where did they go for Chicago, man? It was like a place that
something Farms, I want to say, or
like they went to Chicago, but they didn't go to the top 10 in Chicago. Let's put it that way, right?
I think venues are always compelling. Like we actually talk about this a lot with like the women's game of, going to some of these major venues, going to Pebble Beach, you are going to bump your TV number because people like watching golf at a historic venue when it's a high level championship. But I just don't know that it was ever, I think what you said there about just, the music and the league organization, I think they would have been far better off setting something up that was a more clear competitor to the PGA Tour of like, what we're going to do is you have a lot of stars here that feel like they're being undervalued. They don't like the structure of your league. We're just going to go create something that's a pretty clear competitor to that and pay you more money. And you might have gotten more guys to jump ship instead of, hey, it's a team thing. It's 3 rounds. We don't have OWGR points. We play music. Like it was almost like I can understand trying to do stuff differently, but that's not going to make you a clear competitor to it. Like we talked about when this thing started, the XFL NFL comparison. The XFL knew they were never going to overtake the NFL, but they were trying to do something different to kind of disrupt. And they did. They did in a lot of ways.
Well, which is why you can support the Australia and the South African event, right? Like, I think you can honestly tip your cap and be like,
100%.
Yeah, if you like growing the game, that to me was a good instance of, okay, this was something that LIV was able to nail, like really funding big time events in places that just like love golf.
And I think that's Brian Rolap kind of spoke to that in a way, don't you think, in that players press conference where he's saying, hey, we're looking at the fall. We're looking at going to some of these places. He didn't name specific countries and locations, but we're trying to do some different stuff globally.
I just don't know if the players want to do it, man. Like, that's the thing about the LIV players. I think one of their big issues is that the schedule never was quite right for these guys in preparing them for the big events and the majors, especially with the amount of travel that they've had to do. And then this year being added an extra day of golf, 72 holes. And now you're playing all around the world. You're constantly getting on long flights, long airplanes, traveling across the country, across the world, oftentimes. And then you question too, are these venues preparing them enough for the major championships? And so when you talk about the golf courses, the amount of travel, I think that was probably trying to appeal to a global fan base makes sense. I can understand that aspect of it. But then you look at it from a player side, and sometimes I remember Brooks tweeting out, it's like, hey, can y'all please just let us know where we're playing next year? Do you remember when he was tweeting about the schedule not being finished up? So it always just felt like that was like the thing that they didn't focus on quite as much as they should have to get it exactly the correct schedule for what would be either competing against the PGA Tour or being a complementary version of the PGA Tour, where, hey, maybe we just tackle the PGA Tour events that are the weaker ones. That would have probably been the strategy I would have gone with.
Well, so now let me ask you this, Smylie. We're sitting here. We don't know. We think maybe it's fun through the end of the season. We don't know if that's the case. We don't know what happens beyond the season. I mean, I think that there's a world in which, like, if the PAF's not backing it, I don't see any world in which Bryson DeChambeau is getting $500 million to keep playing on that tour.
At the end of the day, LeBron's going to have to put that team on his back. Can he do it? I don't know if he could do it for a 7-game series. Can he give you like 2, oh my goodness, LeBron at 31? Yeah, I think he can give you a couple of those games. But it's about the other guys that have to step up.
Pro basketball today, only on SportsGrid.
Let me understand this, Joe. Are we going to have any broadcast games on TV anymore? It's all streaming?
You got to pay to watch here, folks. That's just the way it's going to be, one way or the other. And I'm sure this will satisfy, the FCC looking into the coercion that's going on here with the NBA NFL broadcast rights? Yeah, this is all par for the course, I think.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
All these idiots out there sounding off on Tiger right now. See, it's so easy to go after a guy that's hurt. He's hurt. Whether you call it whatever you want. He's got a little bit of an issue that he's going to fix. Okay? They're attacking. Attack. Why don't you all shut up and let him go do his thing? He had to leave the country to do it because of privacy? That's nauseating to me.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio, only on SportsGrid.
Now, I see him 15th, 16th, somewhere in that ballpark, and I think that makes sense, Donnie. I don't see him in the top 10. I really don't. I mean, when you look at, let's say, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, you start going into that, teams like the Cowboys or the Vikings or the Chiefs, and, could they take a flyer?
Prediction Markets Edge, only on SportsGrid.
physically was ready to go. It never stops, man. And like, they weren't going to go away. And so that's why the PGA Tour had to just find whatever was going to be a solution in all this. And honestly, it feels like they're lucky that they're not in a business relationship with them at this point, and that there were enough players that said no, and the right players that said no, and that the LIV Golf didn't get it right. You know, there was a possibility that it was a cool product and that people did like to watch it.
That's right.
But they missed, and they didn't quite adjust enough. They stayed so true to live louder, the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And although they did create a fan experience, and I'm sure it was a fun experience on site, having all these DJs and all these amazing musical guests that would come in and play, I'm sure I would have had a great time as a fan.
Oh yeah.
On site. But the on site experience was fun. But that's the thing with why I don't think moving forward, LIV Golf in the States as a TV product and that's the media rights deal is worth what? It's the numbers that they have. They can't just go and say, well, guys, guess what? We're going to now move everything to the States. And I tell you what, I know you're looking at these numbers. Don't worry about it. They're going to be fine. Well, no, nobody in their right mind, whether you're a Fox or whoever, is going to go and say, you know what, we're going to go pay some big rights fees now. Like that's where they're in trouble right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, undoubtedly, because if you were going to cut a deal for beyond this year, as it has been the past couple, the production costs would have been largely underwritten, if not totally underwritten, by the PIF, as it has been the past few years. And so now it's like you're in a place where, let's say, to your point, Scott O'Neil goes and gets some $400 million commitment. That's all going to go.
Whoa.
Rosie said she wants to chime in here. That's all going to go to just hold the operational costs of a professional sporting league. You know, you can't just hand that right over to Bryson DeChambeau. You can't just put that right.
I know
to persons,
the Bryson
you know?
thing, man.
So it's just
like
I don't. Yeah.
Do you think if the Saudis had come to terms with an agreement with Bryson at this point, that this whole situation would be a lot more clear for them, and that maybe they would have not changed their position in this? Or do you think that with all the things you kind of referred to, with all of the restructuring of the political issues that they're having with the Iran war, blah 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 blah, like you still feel like whether Bryson's contract was done or not done doesn't make a difference?
I still don't think that it has anything to do with the Iran war. I really do think that if they're looking at re-upping for $500 million for Bryson DeChambeau, and they're making that decision in the offseason, but yet all these past contracts they've paid out for all these huge sums have not directly resulted in the commercialization of the league, what evidence do they have that another $500 million to Bryson DeChambeau is going to make that happen? I like, for me, I just think that they were looking at their whole suite of investments. They sold Al Hilal, the flagship team that brought all these superstars over, to play in I believe it was the Saudi league. They're on the verge of selling Newcastle United, which was another big sporting project. Like, they're basically telling you,
weren't they were getting involved in Tom Brady's flag football league, right?
Yeah,
and then they backed out of that.
There are just a lot of things where you can say whatever you want to, but you're going to tell me what your strategy is by your actions. And they're looking at these things and they're saying, okay, we can only do so many of these things realistically with our cash flow situation. What are the things that are the highest impact? And whether it's, NEOM, whether it's the 2030 Expo, whether it's the 2034 World Cup, whatever those things are, those are higher priority than, I mean, to me, LIV has to have lived near the absolute bottom of their list in terms of return on investment. If they spent, over the span of 2 years, $1.5 billion and really didn't do anything from a commercial partnership or a broadcast partner sense with it, like that was material. I just don't think, I think the worst thing in the world would have been signing a $500 million contract with Bryson back in January, because then they'd be in this spot still and they'd be on the hook for all that money. To me, this feels like this has been in the works for a long period of time. And my guess, and again, these are all just educated guesses. I think my guess is that.
Or do you think it just had gotten heightened with all that's going on? It's like, hey, this is our cop out. Like, this
Brooks and Patrick Reed leaving were signals that like, because I guess that you probably still hold out hope that with a new CEO, and by the way, I think Scott O'Neill is leagues better than Greg Norman ever was as an executive heading a professional, sporting league, right? So
except he did kind of drop that. It didn't seem like he needed to say it's like, hey, we're not being funded. he did not past next year. Like that was something I would have probably kept in the chamber.
Well, as an aside, like I can't imagine a tougher spot to be in as an executive than like what card do I play at this point? Because he both needs to keep the current check writers happy in the PIF, but he also needs to start signaling, hey, we want to keep this thing going. Investors, possibly you know, like let's get people in the door here to figure out. So I mean, not a great play there, especially because they scrubbed the interview, or scrubbed that part of the interview. But I just think that it's forever going to be hard to like they had with Brooks leaving, with Patrick Reed leaving. It was just a signal that before they were making these incremental gains against the PGA Tour, the John Rahm sign, they were picking out big names. You and I talked a lot about the rumors we'd heard of the offseason of the profile player they were going after, like knowing that they were on the verge of hitting OWGR points. And hey, let's maybe get a guy that isn't a superstar in terms of like we have to overpay for his world ranking. Let's get a guy that has a good OWGR, but maybe isn't the biggest name in the world, so that when that person plays on our fields, they can up the rating of that field. And so they're kind of looking around trying to grab those types of players. Now they're not only getting those guys, they're losing guys that were superstars and were competitive players, you know, and Brooks Koepka and Patrick Reed. So I assume at that point they start seeing the writing on the wall and they're like, we're never going to have the leverage we had again. We're never going to have the competitive, you know, field strength that we had. We're never going to have that again, really, unless we go out and start paying more money to acquire these guys. And we just can't do that because we already tried that and it didn't work. So what moves do we have left? Not many.
Golly. And just it kind of goes back to whether OWGR and the people at the RNA or the PGA Tour, whoever's on these boards, and how they've slow played this whole process with LIV Golf, just a slow bleed with these guys' world ranking points. It's like, oh, they finally got them this year. It took a while. It's not a whole lot. The players aren't happy with how many world ranking points are being delivered. But
it's something.
Man, how much each player had made in the top 10. Just bizarre, man. Like Taylor Gooch makes $70 million, dude. It's like
and we got
there's guys that have made the right decisions in this, and guys have made the wrong decisions. But dude, like, who are you to say that like some of these guys in this day and age made this much money playing golf, and you tell them it's a wrong decision? It's like, I'm not here to say that one player made a right or wrong decision, because each player has that right. But man, I just was shocked at some of those numbers.
They had an all Spanish podium today. Ram, Puig, and Ballester, who I'll never be able to say his name without thinking of taking a piss in Ray's Creek.
Dude, I mean, it kind of gets me excited though. With they got some young guys that really I'd love to see out on the PGA Tour. The David Puig, the Ballester, like you said, Elvis Smylie. There's a lot of young up and comers that they got over there, like Elvis Smylie. Is of course we'd love to see him play more.
Yeah. That's what I mean. And I we keep finding another yarn to pull on this thing.
I know,
but my sincere hope is that the young guys that don't fall into the returning member or previous winner category, that we like there's some lifeline or way for those guys to not just have their careers fizzle out at this point in time. Because I want to see
they got cash to chase it. That's for sure.
They do have cash to chase it. So I mean, and honestly, that's probably, you know what, like those guys showing up to try to Monday qualify. I mean, the guys are competing against her. I saw someone tweet this. I forget who it was, but like those guys are brushing their teeth in the parking lot. You know what I mean? Like I think they're going to be fine trying to go Monday Q with like the money they earned on LIV. It's not going to be the end of the world for those guys.
It's too the biggest question of how the PGA Tour is going to continue to change their eligibility and their golf landscape, because when they're talking about a 22 event schedule or whatever it might be, that leaves a lot of other dates with another PGA Tour B tour. Is that just a glorified big Corn Ferry, or are there now 3 different steps or 2 additional steps you have to take? That let's say you start at the Americas, go to the Corn Ferry, now you're at PGA Tour B, and all of a sudden now you're playing your way onto PGA Tour A. And so where do all these LIV players fit? Do they go back into the Corn Ferry? Do they go back into PGA Tour A or B, I should say, in this case? I think most PGA Tour members would say, hey, no, get back down to the Corn Ferry Tour and go work your way up.
Let me tell you here. This actually just dawned on me, and I promise it's the last thing I'll say on the issue. But if we're talking about going to this shorter schedule, right? 20, 25 events, off weeks in and around majors, and as we've heard, the weeks that they're off, they're hoping to put marquee Corn Ferry Tour events in those weeks. There's still a compelling television product. If those events feature a bunch of LIV guys trying to play their way back to the PGA Tour, that's a compelling watch all of a sudden. Like college grads and guys that already were on the Corn Ferry Tour battling for cards with these guys that are coming back. The storylines there, like that, all of a sudden, we're actually creating 2 very compelling products that are correctly stratified. Remember, we've talked about this on the show of like, we have, we're selling everything as a platinum tour, and really there's this stratification. That is a correct marketing for each of those different tours, and both of them are highly compelling.
No, and Corn Ferry Tour, I think the biggest thing that they probably struggle with is the name notoriety of the players on the tour. When you sit there and watch, you're like, I don't know. Well, actually, that guy played on tour a little bit. And so I think that's obviously the struggle of that tour, you would imagine, especially with a TV product. But all of a sudden now you've got guys it's like, wait, hold on. He's playing on the Corn Ferry? Like all of a sudden I'm kind of interested. So to your point.
I am. Yeah. So, well, that's it, Smylie. I'm all talked out. Sure we'll recap this again soon. And yeah, we'll tune in to Zurich this week, a little bit wistful, wishing that we were watching you out there playing with Ryan
Dude,
Gerard.
I'm so happy. I'm not going to pack my bags right now to go to the Zurich. Like I was going to do it too, man. I was going to do it.
Yeah. Well, 2027. Let's hope Ryan wins early next year, and stay tuned this week, because we're not going to tease anything hard yet. We got to get it done, but we got another great name, another name many of you love. I'm just gonna tease it with just fine garments. That's how I'm gonna tease it.
That's right.
Look forward to that.
Well,
Thanks.
I'm craving some salmon right now. You know why?
Ooh.
I mean, we look like salmon.
Look at us, dude. Look at our color matching. I'd love to see it. We appreciate y'all watching and listening as always. Hope you enjoy the deep LIV unpack, and we'll be right back here soon talking to you about hopefully less geopolitical issues. That's a guarantee. Talk to you soon.
We'll see you next week on the Golf Channel. This has been The Smylie Show.
I listen to this podcast. It's really cool. And
all of our LIV fans and subscribers, but make sure you like and subscribe.
It's cool to see what you guys are doing. I know golf fans appreciate it, but we do too, so please keep it up.
For all the good people at YouTube, like and subscribe.
You guys have some good takes, so I'm happy to come on and shoot the...
The New York Knickerbockers are NBA champions. Da 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 da. Canyon of Heroes, parade, convertibles, hot chicks in Knick jerseys. The Knicks finally get over the hump and win an NBA title. And there's me, and there's Jalen Brunson.
The Craig Carden Show. Only on SportsGrid.
There are guys are great. We don't know that about Cal Raleigh. It is possible that Cal Raleigh isn't one of the 5 best catchers in baseball by the end of this season. And that's the difference. It's not possible that Aaron Judge isn't one of the 5 best outfielders in baseball. That's not on the board. It's on the board for Cal Raleigh.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
Team feels slow, it feels old, it feels uninteresting. It just kind of feels like a lot of guys who are quality ball players, some big contracts, but are just like lethargic when they're out there. Like Manny Machado moves in slow motion, so does Nick Castellanos, so does Xander Bogaerts, so do a lot of these players in this lineup. And I might be piling on a little bit too deep, but this was supposed to be a contender for a World Series.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
There is one cardinal rule in sports media. You do not mess with the game or the ability for people to watch the game. These streaming giants better figure out how to deliver a live sporting event without any hitches, because broadcast television understood this for decades, and they know, Donnie, hey, there is nothing more important.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.